Can you believe the Bible doesn't want us to do what we think is right? Well, that's what we read in this week's Torah portion. Let me tell you about it. Shalom, my friends. Between last week's Torah reading and this week's Torah reading, we get some very interesting material. Last week, we got the statement that man does not live by bread alone. Now, probably 99% of Americans know that little saying, but that's all they know. They don't know the second half of it. The second half is, man does not live by bread alone. What comes from the mouth of God does man live by. But the point is that we are to thirst, we are to hunger, we are to yearn for the Word of God. And that is what is to guide us through our lives. That relates to what the Torah says this coming week. When we get into the land of Israel, Moses says, you see the Israelites right now are on the eastern side of the Jordan River, and they're ready to cross over into the land of Canaan very shortly. Moses says to them, when we get there, we will not act as we do here, with everyone doing what he or she thinks is right. You would think that's a good thing, wouldn't you? Everybody doing what he or she thinks is right. But in the Torah, that means chaos. Because what one person thinks is right, another person might think is wrong. There's no absolute moral standard. And that's the problem. The Torah absolutely believes in an absolute moral standard. Forgive the redundancy. That is what links this week's reading with last week's reading. Last week, we said man must live by what comes from the mouth of God. This week, it's doing what you think is right is not the way to live. Doing what God says is right is the way to live, because the Torah does believe that God is the moral authority of the universe, a moral authority that supersedes human moral authority. And not only does the Torah believe that, but I believe it as well. Something for you to think about on Shabbat. I hope you have a wonderful and restful Shabbat. I'm sorry that I missed you last week. That was because of a funeral. But we will be continuing to release videos on a weekly basis going forward. Please do consider subscribing to the channel. You can just click on my face right over there. Or if you'd like to see the last video I released, you can click on that icon right over there. Until next week, Shabbat Shalom.